Human adaptation to space. In April 1961, Russian cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin made history when he became the first man to travel in space. On July 20th, 1969, American astronaut Neil Armstrong became the first man to walk on the moon. Now that humans have been to the moon and robots have been sent to Mars, some people believe the next step is for humans to visit Mars. There's no doubt that the first person to walk on Mars will become as famous as Gagarin or Armstrong, and many astronauts would love the opportunity. But what is space travel really like for the men and women who go on these missions? Many astronauts suffer physical problems on these missions, even if they are in space for just a few months. Some of these problems are short-lived. Others may be long-lasting. More than 2/3 of all astronauts suffer from motion sickness while traveling in space. In an environment without gravity, the body cannot tell up from down. The body's internal balance system sends confusing signals to the brain, which can result in nausea lasting as long as a few days. The amount of blood and other fluids in the body also ends up being distributed differently after an extended period of time in this environment. More fluid than normal ends up in the face, neck, and chest, resulting in a puffy face, bulging neck veins, and a slightly enlarged heart. For the duration of their mission, astronauts experience conditions that affect their health. For example, their bones get weaker, and they may lose muscle. Being in a weightless environment means that astronauts tend not to use the muscles they rely upon on Earth, so their muscles gradually atrophy. This, combined with the shift of fluid to the upper body and the resulting loss of essential minerals, such as calcium, causes bones to weaken. As a result, many astronauts are unable to walk properly for a few days upon their return to Earth. In addition, they are exposed to radiation from the sun, which is more intense without the Earth's atmosphere to protect them. This puts them at a higher risk of cancer. In addition to physical difficulties, astronauts who travel for long periods may also suffer from psychological stress. Space travel requires astronauts to be very focused, balanced people. The irregular sleep, long working hours, and the lack of night and day can affect a person's emotions and stress level. Being able to control one's emotions is an important characteristic for an astronaut. A major factor that affects astronauts' mental well-being is time. To date, astronauts have only spent a few months in space at a time, but longer expeditions would require astronauts to spend significantly more time inside a spaceship. For example, a round-trip expedition to Mars could take about 3 years. Being confined in a small space for such a long period of time is not healthy. Research has shown that travelers on such long journeys, such as sailors or explorers in the Arctic, have an above-average chance of suffering from depression. Astronauts, especially those who achieved significant firsts, such as Gagarin and Armstrong, are often seen as exciting adventurers. This may be accurate, but it's also worth remembering their dedication and the sacrifices they make to explore our universe.
Pioneers of flight. Throughout the ages, Inventors have been labeled dreamers for daring to imagine possibilities beyond what already exists. Of course, many have proven their critics wrong and brought their ideas to life, thus changing the world and the way we live. Here are 3 inventors who refuse to give up on the impossible idea of human flight. The Legend of Wan Hu. On October 15, 2003, China launched its first proper spaceship. Astronaut Yang Li Wei was the first Chinese national sent into space, thus fulfilling a dream that had its roots in a much earlier time. Legend has it that in AD 1500, a man named Wan Hu prepared his own mission into space. At that time, the Chinese invention of gunpowder was widely used in rockets for military purposes as well as in fireworks. Wan Hu devised a risky plan to use the power of such rockets to take him to the stars. The story goes that Wan Hu built the first spaceship, a chair with powerful gunpowder rockets and 2 kites attached to it. On the day of the launch, the 47 rockets were lit by 47 servants carrying torches. The servants then moved back and waited. What followed was a huge explosion. Wan Hu and his primitive spaceship had disappeared completely. Although the story may seem a little far-fetched, Wan Hu's crazy plan involving rocket power actually contained the basic principles of spaceflight. Howard Hughes's Spruce Goose. On November 2, 1947, a crowd of people at San Pedro Harbor in Los Angeles witnessed an important moment in flight history. An enormous flying boat, nicknamed the Spruce Goose, sped across the bay and rose 70 feet, 21 meters, above the water. After just under a minute, it landed perfectly 1 mile, 1.6 kilometers, down the bay. It was the first and last time the boat ever flew. The concept for construction of the Spruce Goose came from the need for more effective ways of transporting people and materials in World War II. The idea came from a man called Henry Kaiser, but it was Howard Hughes, the legendary multimillionaire, who actually developed the flying boat. It was the biggest airplane ever built. It still holds the record for the greatest wingspan, and it was made entirely of wood. In the end, though, the project failed for various reasons. It was too expensive to operate, working with wood was slow and difficult, and Hughes's desire for perfection caused the project to finish behind schedule. By the time the Spruce Goose was completed, the war was long over. However, many of its design features have been incorporated into modern planes. Like other pioneers in the field of transportation, Hughes was simply ahead of his time. The futuristic ideas of Leonardo da Vinci. Centuries before the Spruce Goose, another inventor was planning a different kind of flying machine. Leonardo da Vinci, perhaps the most famous artist of the Renaissance period, was inspired by the science of how birds fly. He wanted to build machines with flapping wings, which would be controlled and steered by human pilots. But his dreams remained just that, dreams. It took almost 500 years for Leonardo's ideas to be tested. In June 2000, a professional parachutist named Adrian Nicholas jumped out of a hot air balloon over the South African countryside. He used a parachute made of wood and canvas based on one of Leonardo's designs. Nicholas landed safely, and Leonardo's dream became reality. These 3 individuals, Wan Hu, Howard Hughes, and Leonardo da Vinci, came from places and cultures that are about as different as we can imagine. What they shared was a fascination with flying, a spirit of innovation, and the courage to make their dreams come true.